You then. All right. So
Introduce yourself.
your name is?
Steve.
Hi. How you doing?
Good.
And what do you believe in? Why, please?
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I wish. I wish.
So you're Muslim then?
Yeah, you got it right. I have no religious beliefs.
No religious
If
beliefs.
that's what you're after. No.
Are you an atheist?
Yeah. I'm an anti-theist.
Anti-theist.
I'd even go further than atheism.
So how do you find?
It's nonsense, but it's evil nonsense.
Okay. And what do you find not convincing about religion?
What do I find not convincing about pixies at the end of my garden? What do I find non-convincing about the tooth fairy?
Well, let me ask you this way: how convinced are you that atheism is true? Like on a scale of 0 to 100%.
100%.
100%. Are you not open to any kind of like doubt at all? If you spoke to a Christian who's no one's
Spoken to people who are all, about all faiths, many faiths.
All right.
No,
Thank you for
and
that.
Sikhs and Jews and I don't think if I've ever had a conversation with a Hindu. You don't get many of them around here, do you? Druids, well, our friend Steve Barnes, he's quite open about it. The PC, the police guy that mainly covers Speaker's Corner is a Druid.
You've always been
And actually, to be honest, now this is going to be changing what I just said. If I had time for any religion, it would probably be paganism. I would rather worship the sun, the moon, the trees, the things that give me life. Because they do give me life. Whether it's the heat of the sun, the energy of the sun, the photosynthesis of the plants, the oxygen from the plants. I couldn't survive without the sun and the plants. So I wouldn't worship them in the traditional sense of the word worship. If there was anything that I had huge respect for, it would be the sun and the plants.
So do you believe that the sun and the plants were put here by a god or creator?
Categorically not.
Okay. And you, sir?
Oh, me? Yeah.
Name?
Well, I disagree with actually everything he said, apart from
Everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are your beliefs
I'm
and why?
Paul, I'm Muslim, so I believe that God created the sun and the air and the photosynthesis and everything.
Okay.
Because obviously it didn't create itself, and it didn't come from nothing, because nothing comes from nothing. So there's an intelligent designer behind it all that brought it into being.
And how long have you been a Muslim?
About 10 years.
And what was you before then?
Christian.
Okay, so you was open to questioning your beliefs when you was a Christian.
Towards the end of my belief as a Christian, yes.
So you was wrong about Christianity. Is it possible that you're wrong about Islam?
Well, I wasn't wrong about Christianity. I didn't say that. That's what you said. No, I think most of Christianity is true.
Okay.
But there's one or two fundamental mistakes, principally to do with the nature of God and the Trinity and Jesus himself.
Yeah.
And I came to understand that the historical Jesus did not believe that he was God.
Yeah.
And at the same time I was going through that process, I went to my local mosque and found that Islam gets Jesus just about right. He's not God. He's a prophet, he's a Messiah, but he's not God. And that's pretty much the link between me and Islam was Jesus himself.
Okay. So if I was standing next to a Christian and you as a Muslim, how would I decide who to believe? Which one is the more convincing argument? Because I mean, the Christian would be
Muslims have the more convincing arguments easily because we say that God doesn't die.
Yeah.
That the Christians believe God dies. Of course God doesn't die. It says in the Bible that God is immortal. He doesn't die. Jesus himself in the earliest Gospels denies he's good in Mark chapter 10.
Okay.
So Islam actually can affirm parts of the Bible which speak truly about Jesus. The New Testament does not speak of a Trinity. There's a much later belief that Christians have invented.
So now I spoke to Steve. He's 100% convinced that God doesn't exist. Are you 100% convinced that God does exist?
Yes, but notice he didn't give you any evidence.
Okay.
Notice you didn't ask him about evidence. You see, if you have a positive belief in something, you should always ask, well, what's your proof for this?
What is your proof?
And so you didn't ask him what his proof was
Okay.
that God does not exist.
Yeah.
For me, the proof of God exists is the universe itself, the exquisite fine-tuning, the incredible beauty, the way systems, incredibly sophisticated systems operate in nature, in biology, the laws of physics. Clearly none of this came about just by random accident. They've been put here with intelligence, with design, with purpose. And I believe our lives have that purpose. Secondly, I also believe because of people like Jesus, people like Muhammad, if you look at their lives and their teaching, it testifies to their authenticity and also speaks profoundly to the human need to have a spiritual life, worship of one God, and so on. And there are lots of evidences, too long perhaps for this video.
What's I mean, for me, when I was a Christian, I was a Catholic, and
What are you now?
I'm an atheist now.
Oh, you're an atheist?
Yeah, atheist.
So what's your evidence for atheism? Turn the tables on you.
Well, looking at different religions around the world, I can see how it forms, you know, because I mean, people need to believe in something. It's very comforting to know how things came about, you know. And culturally it kind of became a gel that held cultures together. Like for instance, you're a Muslim, you go to your mosque and you've got your fellowship with the fellow Muslims, and it gives you a kind of purpose in life. Like when I was a Christian, it had the same kind of thing for me.
I didn't ask you about culture. I asked you about why God does not exist. I didn't ask you about what cultural beliefs there were. What is your evidence that a creator God who made all things, the heavens and the earth, does not exist?
Well, when I looked at the first chapter in the Bible, Genesis, it God created heaven and earth, and then His Spirit was floating above the waters. And we know from now that the Big Bang was 13.8 billion years ago, and then the Earth formed about 9 billion years later. So there wasn't an Earth for the gods.
Again, you're talking about the Bible. I'm just asking you, atheism is denial that God exists.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly concerned with a particular book what is your evidence that God as such does not exist? Saying a book gets it wrong is not a disproof of God's existence, is it? It means the book is wrong.
Atheism is a kind of like, they're not convinced that the evidence that people who believe are telling me the truth.
What kind of evidence then, let me ask you this question, what kind of evidence would you like to see that would lead you to believe that God existed?
Well, being as God is supposed to be omnipotent, and omniscient,
Omniscient meaning all-knowing.
All-knowing, yeah.
Right.
Then He would have, say, for instance, in the Bible or the Quran, if it's supposed to be a message for all mankind, then He would have at least put a map of the whole world in it, with North and South America, Australia, places that the people who wrote the book didn't know about, but God would have known about. So that would have been a logical thing to do, to say there's this place across this ocean, the Pacific.
You're an atheist because God didn't put a map of the world in the Bible or the Quran?
No, because that's one of the things. And the stories in the Quran and the stories in the Bible,
Is it possible to address this question without talking about the Bible?
Yeah.
The Quran? Because the Bible and the Quran, in terms of human experience, didn't always exist. The Quran, as human beings were concerned, we knew that in the 7th century onwards, or they existed with God. The Bible has only existed perhaps the last few thousand years. Mankind's been around 100,000, 200,000 years.
Yeah.
So the bulk of mankind, we've never had the Bible, for example. I'm asking you to just in principle, what is it about God's existence as such that you would need to see as evidence to lead you to change your mind about the existence of God Himself, without reference to the Bible, if possible?
Well, when we look at things like biology and science and physics and stuff like that, the deeper you go, you don't find any equation where say insert God here. Everything kind of seems natural. There's natural laws in place. There's
so
natural.
You expect to see. So, what would you want to see if God
something
exists?
that goes against the natural laws, like the science that we find.
Against the natural order for God to
exist.
Exist.
Something like miraculous, or something that's.
Well, there have been miracles. People say that Jesus' ministry, Prophet Muhammad, lots of miracles. Maybe that happened to the whole of mankind 24 hours a day that we can all see.
Yeah.
But many people say they have witnessed miracles now and throughout history. But that's not something we can all access. We can't all access that miracle, those miracles.
I mean, we're all flawed human beings, yeah? And my mum, she goes to Lourdes every year for the pilgrimage. Yeah. Apparently 2 girls saw the Virgin Mary in a cave, and people go there to get cured in the waters, yeah? Well, there's no evidence that that's actually true. But
what's true?
That people get cured in this waters.
Well, that you say that, but there is an independent panel of doctors and medical experts that have verified a number of miracles that were directly attributed to prayer to the Virgin Mary and are not explicable scientifically. That's what they say.
Apparently they've got about 66 which are unverified of how this person got ill. But that people have remission.
There's no natural explanation why these people were healed and that they are attributed directly to the intercession of Virgin Mary.
But people have millions of people have been there over the years, and to only have that 66 people who have unverified skills.
I hear what you say. You see, I'm the opposite. When I hear scientists, biologists or geneticists and so on, talk about the complexity of nature that they're discovering and unraveling as the days and years go on, what I see is not disorder and ugliness and randomness and clearly an ugly kind of mess. What we're seeing is exquisite, sophisticated mechanisms of incredible complexity.
I see that too. I see the beauty and complexity as well.
But you see, this is not explicable on the Darwinian theory of evolution. I mean, this is just random natural selection. These are incredibly sophisticated mechanisms and go into detail with biology or laws of physics. And we're discovering beauty and order and exquisite fine-tuning. They're not finding the opposite of what you would expect in a random, meaningless, purposeless universe, which was just thrown together in a haphazard way.
But no,
they're finding almost like intelligence, the sophistication involved in these highly complex mechanisms and systems that they're finding.
Are you talking about biological systems,
in biological systems and at the level
physical
of physics and so on.
So why is it that people?
The more science looks into this, they're discovering more and more of this. Now, for me, this speaks of a creator, of course. It doesn't speak atheism. I'm not sure how atheism can explain. You say it's a natural process. That doesn't explain anything.
But the more that people become understanding these processes, the less that they become religious. Like most of the scientists, physicists, and stuff like that.
But why do you think that is?
Why? Because they're finding natural answers to these questions that they're asking. Yeah, they're not finding like supernatural questions.
Oh, what do you mean? Oh no, they're not finding like a miraculous zap. That's not what we believe. That's not what I'm arguing for. You see, science is a very narrow, pared down method of inquiry. It deliberately excludes other dimensions, other explanations. That's in the West, the way it's practiced anyway. It's called methodological naturalism, methodological atheism.
Do you think that they deliberately exclude everyone?
Oh yeah, of course they have to, because that's how the scientific method is set up. So they deliberately, the habits of thought, I think are developed amongst many scientists to deliberately exclude any explanation of a philosophical or theological nature, because the way discipline itself requires them to always narrow it down to a very materialistic explanation. And I think that creates, as I say, habits of mind which are hostile or inimical. Also, I was speaking to a scientist yesterday who is a Muslim. He teaches at Imperial College, one of the leading science institutions in the world. And as I say, he's a Muslim. He's actually an English guy, a revert. And he was saying that most of the scientists he knows are philosophically illiterate. They know nothing about philosophy. They don't really think outside of the narrow practice of their own discipline. Whereas to have a knowledge of philosophy, and thus theology as well, helps you to see much broader than the narrow scientific explanation of reality.
Let's just say that we're both.
That's why atheism, I think, is caused by the way science is practiced in the West.
Let's just say there's lots of stuff that I don't know, okay? And I'll admit that there's more for me to learn. Is there stuff that you don't know about your belief? Like, would you say 100% convinced that God exists?
Well, I'm convinced because I have a moral certainty He exists.
So you're 100% convinced, absolutely, that God exists? Yeah? But I'm not 100%.
I've already answered that question.
I'm not 100% convinced that God does not exist. I could be wrong, you see?
See, many believers that don't doubt the existence of God. I don't doubt the existence of God. That's simply not part of my psychological makeup.
Yeah.
But I think Steve has a similar settled certainty when it comes to atheism. I'm just talking about the kind of settled certainty that believers or non-believers, some non-believers have. Whereas this chap here is an atheist. He's not 100% settled in his atheism. I think you just said that. So there are kind of degrees of confidence and certainty across the spectrum.
But I could be wrong, yeah? I don't know if you would admit that you could be wrong. So maybe you
could be wrong.
No, I'm never wrong. I could be wrong.
Yeah, right. Could you be wrong?
I could be.
In fact, anyone surely that answers that question by saying no, I could never be wrong, is lying, aren't they?
Well, they don't understand the fallibility of the foolish. Yeah.
Now, what I find is that human beings, we could all be wrong about everything, yeah? We can't all be right.
Yeah.
You know, Christians can't be right, and Muslims be right, and Jews and Hindus be right. They could all be wrong. Now, what I find is a lot of people's morality and their humanity transcends their beliefs. So I respect people for the way they are. No matter what belief you have, or you have, no matter what colour you are, no matter what sexuality you are, I give people the same respect. I don't agree with your beliefs, but I respect your right to have your beliefs.
That's a good.
You know what I mean?
The problem I have with atheism is that it's not grounded when it comes to morality, ethics, right, sense of right and wrong, or sense of justice or injustice. It's not actually rooted in anything. When you say, well, when someone, I'm not saying you have, but atheists often complain about the injustice of a particular action or event in the universe. I'm saying, sorry, where do you get this notion of justice from, such that you can judge this behaviour to be unjust? where is it coming from?
Well, it's come from the well-being of other people. Because if, say, for instance,
don't presume, because, this is a problem that atheism has. Because my point is, it's borrowed language actually from theism, from Christian discourse or Islamic discourse. It's not intrinsic. Atheism cannot sustain language of, say, justice and injustice, because there is no such thing objectively in the universe for an atheist worldview.
Well, what is it? If you was to say, all right, then I don't believe in Islam no more, I'm going to be an atheist, okay? And then after a year, you thought, I can't take this atheism business, I'm going to be a Muslim again, right? There's no punishment for that. You'd be okay. You say, fine, you can do that. Whereas if I became a Muslim, and I took the Shahada, went for my prayers, and if I decide to leave Islam, then I'm an apostate, and the punishment for apostasy.
What's this got to do with what we've just been talking?
No, it's about it's about morality. Where do I get morality from?
Right, but that's a good thing. So my point about atheism. Sorry, I'm not talking about leaving Islam. That's not really the point. The point is that atheism doesn't appear when it uses the language of religion, essentially theistic language, about justice or injustice, about actions in the law. Where does it get these rules of judgment from?
You just said you were using the language of religion.
No, I'm asking you.
And I think the morals transcend religion.
Where do you use, if you use this language, which I think you do, where do you get these rules from, these rules of morality from?
I think what it is like a consequential ethics, yeah?
Sorry?
Like consequential ethics. What I do has consequences for other people. And if I'm going to harm somebody, yeah, right, it affects me because I know that if that person harmed me, I wouldn't like it. So why would I want to harm that person? I want to live in a world where people are living in harmony and peace, not harming each other. So I don't need a God to tell me that.
So where does justice come into that? I missed the point. You're talking about like and dislike based on pain and pleasure and like and dislike. I was asking you about the rule of justice and injustice, such that atheists can judge certain actions as unjust or just. I'm asking you where that comes from.
Right, so that we get together as human beings. No, we're intelligent people. We can get together as human beings, yeah? And we all want to live in a world where we're having peace and we live in harmony with each other. We're not killing and raping each other, stealing from each other. So we can come together and make up a set of rules, like the Declaration of Human Rights and stuff like that.
Okay, let's apply some practice. I would say as a Muslim that killing unborn children through abortion is unjust.
Yeah.
You agree with that as an atheist, yeah?
Yes, on certain circumstances.
Okay. Now, be aware that most atheists in the West support abortion.
Yeah, on certain circumstances, we've come to a conclusion whereby
we're not going to agree.
No, there's 24 weeks in this country where you can have an abortion, but I think it should be lower than that myself, personally.
But you're assuming we can come to an agreement, and we can't. On many issues, non-believers and atheists will not agree, and believers mostly actually will agree. You'll find traditional Catholics and Jews and Muslims and Sikhs will actually agree on this. But atheists, because where do you get your rule of justice from? It's just on a sense of agreement.
Yes.
But what happens if people disagree?
Yeah. If disagree, then you have a consensus and you have a committee to come together, ethical committees and stuff like that. Like, for instance, do you think abortion is wrong in all circumstances? Because there's a woman who was raped by her brother. She's 15. He was put in prison, and she was put in prison for having an abortion. Now, do you think that is wrong?
I don't think that killing another human being is a way to deal with rape.
If someone is raped by their brother,
I don't think shedding more blood is a good way of dealing with rape. That's my answer.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion. I may disagree with you.
No, but you asked me my opinion.
Yeah, you asked me my opinion.
But the point is, we're not going to agree because I have a different understanding of what the human being is.
Yeah.
See, I still my sense is that atheists do not have a rule of justice. It doesn't come from anywhere. It's simply a product of their subjective musings. And that would change from moment to moment, from generation to generation. It's not rooted in any metaphysical, transcendent moral code.
If your rule of justice tells you
therefore it is not worthy to live a moral and good life, because there's nothing there to give that person guidance.
If your rule of justice tells a father to kill his son, like what he told Abraham to kill his son, do you think that is cruel? Do you think that that's just for him to actually do that?
I'm not talking about Abraham. I'm talking about us today. How we formulate a moral standard. And we're not in a classroom, by the way.
If you have a supernatural being telling you what's just, that's the danger, because he could tell you to do something that is very horrific. Like people maybe having.
So you're looking at the biblical accounts. The account in the Quran is quite different. There's no human sacrifice.
And you have things which are moral but unethical.
So there's different accounts of different scriptures. So I'll just finally say that atheism does not provide a way of life that is holistic and sound and rooted in transcendent realities. That it is like a quicksand that will take you anywhere and nowhere. only faith or religion, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, can provide those transcendent values, and also acknowledges that the Creator made our universe and requires from us.
That's a religious superiority. Only Islam.
It's just a fact.
No, only Islam can provide them with it. Like I read the Quran, it says if you kill one human being, it's like killing the whole of humanity. Yeah. So I thought, let me read it in context. And the very next verse says, if someone's creating mischief in Muslim lands, then you must chop off their hands and legs from opposite ends, opposite feet.
No, if a person,
that is not.
Says more than that. If you declare war, it says, on God and His messenger. The content revelation was where someone attacked a shepherd and others, and to rob them, and they beat them up and they tortured them and they killed them and they stole their goods. Now, this was a terrible, terrible crime, and the context is where you declare war on God and His messenger. And if you commit acts of terrorism, for example, it's that kind of thing.
Do you believe in conflict resolution? Huh? Do you think that's the best form of conflict resolution, to tell people to go and kill?
No. The Sharia is a very complex and sophisticated body of law, and it's not just like these kind of flirty type things. It's not how it works. There's a different discussion talking about the complexities of Islamic jurisprudence. It's a highly complicated subject. We're not going to deal with it now. I'm just saying that I've not found atheism provide reasons for a morally good life, where if there is no God and the universe is meaningless.
What about humanism? Do you thought you'd be tried
it's the same thing.
Well, atheism is just like non-believing God.
Humanism is just that with a bit of
it's a set of
civil
ethics.
Discourse on it. But the metaphysics don't change. It's the same for atheism. I'm going to move on now because I think
Thanks for talking.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, like eccentric and